Howdy, everybody. Here is our last unit of the year. Yay! 9-1, pregnancy and development. So we're going to be talking about those little guys right there, little fetuses, and everything that goes into making them and how they grow and what happens to mom and what happens when they pop out of you. So here we go. It all begins with something called fertilization. Fertilization is the process that occurs when the egg and sperm come together. So before we do that, just some vocab for you. First of all, pregnancy, as we probably all know what pregnancy is all the events that occur from the time of fertilization until the infant is born. And typically that lasts anywhere from 38 to 40 weeks. It all depends on how you look at it. When a doctor looks at your pregnancy, he goes 40 weeks. But we usually think about it as 30 weeks, 38 weeks, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Okay, when the egg and the sperm get together, we call that thing the conceptus, because it's not really anything quite yet. So the conceptus is just the thing which is conceived. That's actually what this means in Latin. So that's the offspring. Normally they don't call it conceptus very often. They usually call it pre-embryo, embryo, fetus, or infant. So we'll go with those. So the gestation period, gestation means being pregnant, that goes from the first day, I should put that, from the first day of your last menstrual period until birth, about 280 days, which is crazy because you have a week of your period and then a week of being fertile, so there's no period there, and then this day is when you get pregnant, and then you go for the 38 weeks. So you have 1 week that's your period, a second week that you're happy, and then you get pregnant right here, and then 38 more weeks. So really, 38 plus these 2 weeks right here is 40 weeks, and there's this number here. So the baby is only inside of you for the 38 weeks, but a doctor, since a lot of times you don't know when this actually occurred, we do know the first day of your last period, more so than when you actually had sex. So what the doctor does is he starts it from a known date as opposed to, well, it could have been this day or that day, we don't know. And so your pregnancy technically lasts 40 weeks. And there goes the lights. Who cares? So the crazy thing is, at conception, when you have sex and you get pregnant, you're technically 2 weeks pregnant already. It's stupid, I know. But that's the way the doctors go. So once you get pregnant, you have inside of you a pre-embryo. And basically it's one cell or a group of cells or a big hollow ball of cells. So it doesn't look like a human or anything yet. And then we have an embryo, which is 3 to 8 weeks. It still doesn't quite look like a human. It looks more like a tadpole, and with maybe an eyeball trying to migrate around. Then we have a fetus, which is from 9 to 40 weeks. And that's when you're like, oh, that is not a baby. There's a head, there's some buds, there's the tail's gone. It kind of starts looking like a human. And then after birth there, that's when you got the actual infant itself. So over here is a picture. Let me move it so you can actually see it. Ta-da! That is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 8-cell stage. So this is a pre-embryo. And all of these cells have the ability to turn into any other cell in your body. So these are technically stem cells if you think about it. So at this stage, you don't even know you're pregnant yet. All right, next. Let me get that back up. Okay, so it all starts out with this guy right there, called an oocyte. Oocyte means egg. Cyte means cell. So an oocyte is an egg cell. And that is your haploid cell, 1N, or 23 chromatids. And it's usually viable or able to be fertilized for 12 to 24 hours after popping out of the ovary. So you have your week of period, 1 week, and then you have your 1 week of freeness, and then this is when the egg pops out. So you've got about 3 days before and about 3 days after. That is the no zone, because you can get pregnant in that little window right there. Then we have this little guy, a spermatocyte, which is a fancy name for a sperm cell, also referred to as a spermatid. This guy is also 1N haploid, contains 23 chromatids, and they're viable for up to 24 to 72 hours after ejaculation. So that's why the +3 after. Because even though the egg only is good for 1 day, but the sperm are good for up to 3 days. And so, yeah, it makes like a whole week worth of don't do anything. So, if you wanted to get pregnant because you're married and you love each other and you want to have children, then the best chances of fertilization, coitus, that's called sex, must occur no more than 3 days before ovulation and no later than typically 24 hours. It can go up to 3 days, but 24 hours is good. So that is your fertile window. So if you have any girls, if you have the app that tracks your girliness, they'll give you a little window of when not to do things. But you're not going to because you're underage and yeah, that stuff. So then what happens is when the egg and the sperm get together, that will make a zygote. A zygote is, whoops, not me. Let's try moving this one. Is that guy. A zygote is the cell that is formed when the egg and the sperm get together. So it's not quite a baby yet, but now it is 2N, and there are 46 chromatids, and they all found their match. So that makes 23 pairs, like that. And so now we have the beginnings of an actual baby. Now, the crazy thing is most pregnancies don't end in a baby. And so a lot of people get pregnant, get this far, but then just something doesn't work. And then you have a period and it comes out and you never knew. So that's very, very common, actually, that that happened. But we never know because we just have a period like normal and we never knew that we were pregnant. Okay, so the sperm. How do they get to the egg? Well, they've got a huge battle ahead of them. So when they go into the vagina, they're going to run into secretions. This is a vagina right there. So that's the butt cheeks right there. And so the sperm usually come out right about there, right next to the cervix. The cervix is the bottom of the uterus. Yes, it looks like a little butt cheek. So when the sperm get in there, we have an acidic environment, which will kill most of the sperm. And then there's like a big old snot ball right here of mucus inside of the cervix. So more of them die as they try to get in there. If they do get in, some sperm get in, well, they don't fertilize the egg in the uterus. They have to find the egg. Here's the ovary. They got to find the egg in the fallopian tube. Well, girls typically only pop out 1 egg on one side a month. It usually takes turns. So how does the sperm know which way to go? They don't. So it's a 50-50 chance that they got the correct tube. And then they got to deal with muscle contractions of the uterus. They've got to deal with secretions. And then inside of here, there's a little bitty hairs that are pushing this way, and the sperm are trying to go that way. So they have a really hard time trying to make it to the egg themselves. Once they do, the sperm itself needs to undergo some changes as well. As you can tell, the structure of the head of the sperm is different. So when it's inside of the epididymis, and if you remember that from freshman year, was that little extra cool accessory on the testes. So here's a testicle. This is the epididymis. This is where all the sperm gets stored until they're ready to jump free. And then after they pop out, they've changed a little bit, but it isn't until they get rid of all these little things on the surface that they can actually fertilize you. So the fresh sperm, are able to or unable to fertilize the egg. First, they need to be capacitated. And that is basically the same thing as beheaded. Oh no, you got to chop their little heads off. So what you have to do for capacitation is they need to lose their outer layer. So like we saw in the previous picture, we've got some mitochondria, a little tail, and then they have this outer layer like this. So for capacitation, what needs to happen is that, and it's a natural process, is that the outer layer right here needs to disappear. And so it takes about 6 to 8 hours. So even if you have coitus, you are not pregnant immediately. It's not going to happen at least 6 to 8 hours afterwards. And then once the outer layer is gone, then we can start doing stuff to the egg. So even if the sperm reach the egg quickly, they all have to wait around for a while. So we always hear, you know, congratulations on being the quickest sperm. It's not the quickest sperm. It's usually the lazy guys at the back that just kind of show up. Hey, it's been 8 hours. Can we help? And then they come in and then they get to start having fun. While the quick guys, they're dead. So the egg, well, he doesn't really want to be penetrated. He doesn't want to be fertilized. So there's a couple layers. We have the corona radiata, and that's this layer. Goes all the way around like that. It's the fortress wall around the egg. And there's something called the zona pellucida right there, and that's this one right here. So we've got 2 layers of walls that the sperm have to get through before they can even say hi to the egg. So, you know, it's like taking someone out for dinner and drinks first. So what happens is on the surface of the egg cell, now that we've removed that outer layer, there's an inner layer of enzymes. So this is called the acrosome, which is this enzyme layer. So when the enzymes start eating their way through the brick walls, we call that the acrosomal reaction. So the sperm binds to the zona pellucida, so they eat their way through here, and then they attach to this layer, and they start to break down that layer as well. And the only way that happens is if hundreds of sperm, this guy eats a little way, then he dies and falls off. Another guy eats his way through, he dies and falls off. Another guy eats, and so it's like they're walking over the dead bodies of the previous guys until finally they make it to the inside. So hundreds of sperm are going to kill themselves to make a path for the lazy sperm in the back who shows up late to the party. And then he's like, hey, look at that, there's a tunnel. I think I'll go through it. So then, once the tunnel makes its way inside, whichever lucky sperm happens to be that one, he gets sucked into the cytoplasm of, actually this is the cytoplasm of the egg, and then something amazing happens. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, it's amazing. You gotta wait. So, in our eggs, when we have an egg and a sperm, even though there's hundreds of them around it, only one egg is allowed in. We call that monospermy. One sperm. One egg per sperm. That's it. Because nothing else. You can't have any more. Some animals will have lots of spermies, but that doesn't work with us. So we have monospermy, and what prevents polyspermy is because once that egg pops in, something called the fast block occurs. Fast block is there's sodium, if you guys remember Na, sodium channels, cause the membrane around the outside of the egg to depolarize. Okay, so the positives and negatives trade places, just like, you know, with the muscles and the neurons and stuff like that. And then we get something called the cortical reaction. So inside there's little granules of, I believe it's cortisone. I'll have to check on that one. Sorry. And then what happens is that they pop open and that releases chemicals to this outer layer. And now this egg has a even thicker wall around it so that no other sperm are allowed to come in. So that prevents all these guys, try as they might to work their way through, they will never ever be able to eat through. So the cortical reaction and fast block, 2 ways to make sure that nobody else gets inside. After fertilization occurs, the nuclei, that's plural, so we got the 2 nuclei, there's one right there and one right there, one of the egg and one of the sperm, they swell, they get big and fat. And so all the DNA, they get bigger, bigger, bigger. And they come together. And so as they find each other, they fuse and they become a pronuclei. Remember, pro means first. First. So the first nucleus that comes together. The pronuclei breaks, releasing all their DNA. So this looks like just hours after, not days. This is hours after. So 2 hours, 3 hours, 7 hours, 15 hours, and so on. And it's hard to tell, but the blue and the red arrow right there is showing the male and female DNA coming together. Once that happens, then the chromosomes, chromatids, they find their homologous partner. So that's why you have 2 of everything, one from mom, one from dad, and they produce a 2N, a diploid zygote. And then we get our very first mitotic division. And then we get little butt cheeks, if you notice. So here's another picture, just from a different view, showing them coming together. First cell division, there's the cleavage right there. Boop, boop. And same thing down here, just different views of the same thing. And so now what do we have? We have our conceptus. So the first mitotic division. So about a day after, says 23 hours. So roughly about a day after sex, now you've made a conceptus. You're not quite pregnant yet. Not pregnant yet. You're not pregnant until it starts sucking nutrients out of you. So all you have now is a conceptus, which is still in the fallopian tubes. All these cell divisions are going on inside of your fallopian tubes. So you're still not pregnant yet. You just happen to have made a conceptus. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. We're going to try something a little different. You're going to take a piece of paper, and I don't care if it's a half piece or a full piece, but you're going to answer just the answers. You don't need the questions. So just write down on a half sheet of paper, put your name on it, put 9-1 note check, answer the questions, and then tomorrow when you walk into class, go turn it into the basket. All right, so the questions are, what do you call the group of cells that result from conception to 2 weeks after conception? So from 0 to 2 weeks. Number 2, what do you call it when a sperm loses his outer layer before entering the egg? Number 3, how many weeks does a pregnancy last according to the doctors versus how many weeks are you actually pregnant? How many weeks do you actually have a thing inside of you? And last thing, what do you call a sperm cell? Okay, so thank you much for watching and listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.